How could a woman convince herself that abandoning her stepchildren at a state facility would make her husband love her more? What happens when a man returns from a 2-week business trip to discover his children are gone and his wife calls it a fresh start for our real family? I'm Melisande Vane, but everyone calls me Mel. I'm 32 years old and I work as an administrative assistant at a mid-sized insurance firm downtown. I married Owen Travers 2 years ago, and I thought our life together would be perfect. But perfection is hard when you're constantly reminded of someone else's past. It was a Thursday afternoon when everything started to shift, though I didn't realize it at the time. I stood in the school pickup line, surrounded by mothers who seemed to belong there in a way I never would. They chatted easily, waving at their children as they spilled out of the building. I checked my phone for the third time in 5 minutes, willing the clock to move faster. This wasn't supposed to be my responsibility. These weren't my children. Lily and Ben were Owen's kids from his first marriage, and every time I had to pick them up, I felt like I was playing a role in someone else's life. Lily appeared first, her backpack dragging behind her. She was 8 years old, with her late mother's dark hair and cautious eyes. She spotted me, and her smile faltered, just for a second. It was a small thing, but I noticed. Ben came running after her, 5 years old and all energy. He waved at me and I forced myself to wave back. The other mothers probably thought I looked normal, but inside I was counting the minutes until I could drop them at home and have some time to myself. When we got home, Owen was in the living room packing for his business trip. His suitcase lay open on the sofa, and he was folding shirts with the kind of precision that always made me feel like I was doing things wrong. He looked up and smiled when we walked in, thanking me for picking up the kids. I told him it was fine, but my voice came out tighter than I meant it to. He didn't seem to notice. He was already back to his packing, mentally gone even though his flight wasn't until morning. I sat down on the opposite end of the sofa and watched him organize his things. He reminded me about the schedule for the week, when the kids needed to be at school, what they liked for breakfast, bedtime routines. I nodded along, feeling the weight of it all settling on my shoulders. He asked if I was sure I was okay with everything, and I said of course I was. What else could I say? That I resented being left to play house with children who would never really be mine. That I wished we could just be a normal couple without all this baggage from his past. Instead, I mentioned casually that I had been thinking we should look at smaller places once he got back. Somewhere without so many memories crowding the walls. Owen stopped folding and looked at me. He said the kids needed stability, that moving would be hard on them right now. I smiled and said I understood, but inside I felt dismissed. It was always about the kids. Always about what they needed, what they felt, what they remembered about their mother. That evening, I helped Ben with his homework, while Owen put Lily to bed. I could hear her voice from the hallway, asking Owen questions about his trip, asking if he would call them every night. Her voice had that clingy, anxious quality that made me want to close the door and turn up the television. Owen's responses were patient and warm, and I felt a sharp twist of something I didn't want to name. Jealousy, maybe. Or just exhaustion. Later, when the kids were finally asleep, Owen and I lay in bed in the dark. He fell asleep quickly, the way he always did before a trip. I stayed awake, staring at the ceiling and thinking about the life I had imagined when we got married. I had pictured us traveling together, going out to nice dinners, sleeping in on weekends. Instead, I was drowning in routines that revolved around 2 children who weren't mine and a dead woman's memory that seemed to live in every corner of this house. My phone vibrated softly on the nightstand. I picked it up and saw a message from Kyle, the personal trainer at the gym I had joined 6 months ago. He was asking if I was free tomorrow evening. I stared at the message for a long moment, my thumb hovering over the keyboard. I typed a response, then deleted it. Then I typed another one saying I could probably make it work. I hit send before I could change my mind. As I set the phone back down, I heard a sound from the hallway. The guest bedroom door latched quietly. I assumed Owen was just putting his duffel bag in there for the morning, but something about the sound stayed with me. It felt deliberate, like he was closing off more than just a room. I told myself I was being paranoid. Owen was predictable. He wouldn't do anything unexpected. But as I turned over and tried to sleep, that small click echoed in my mind. Owen left early Friday morning before the kids woke up. I heard the front door close and felt a strange mix of relief and dread. The house was mine for the next week, but so was everything that came with it. I got Lily and Ben ready for school, moving through the motions mechanically. Lily was quiet at breakfast, pushing her cereal around the bowl. Ben asked if Daddy had already left, and when I said yes, his face crumpled. I told him his father would call tonight, trying to sound reassuring, but my tone came out flat. After I dropped them at school, I drove straight to work. The insurance firm was busy that morning, phones ringing constantly, but I couldn't focus. I kept checking my phone, refreshing my messages. Sandra, my co-worker, noticed. She leaned over the partition between our desks and asked if I was expecting an important call. I laughed and said it was just gym stuff, trying to sound casual. Sandra's eyebrow went up slightly, but she didn't push. Still, I caught her looking at me a few times during the morning, and each glance made me feel exposed. Around mid-morning, another colleague stopped by my desk. Her name was Jennifer, and we weren't particularly close. She mentioned in passing that she thought she had seen my car at the gym really late the other night. I felt my face get warm, but I smiled and said I had been trying to stay in shape. Jennifer nodded, but there was something in her expression I couldn't quite read. It wasn't friendly curiosity. It felt more like she was connecting dots I didn't want connected. By lunchtime, I was restless. I texted Kyle and asked if he was free that evening. He responded almost immediately, saying he could meet me at the gym after his last client. I felt a thrill run through me, a spark of something that had been missing from my life for too long. Owen never made me feel this way anymore. Everything with him was careful and measured, always filtered through what was best for the kids. That evening, I picked up Lily and Ben from school and took them home. I made them dinner, something simple that I knew they would eat without complaining. Ben barely touched his food, and when I asked what was wrong, he said he missed Daddy. I told him Daddy would be back soon and that he needed to be a big boy. Lily watched me from across the table, her eyes too knowing for an 8-year-old. She asked if I was mad at them. I said no, but my voice was sharper than I intended. The question irritated me. Why did they always assume everything was about them? After dinner, I told them I had to run an errand and that they should stay in their room and play quietly. Lily's face tightened with worry, and she asked where I was going. I said it was just something quick, that I would be back soon. Ben started to cry, saying he didn't want to be alone. I felt my patience snap. I told him he wasn't alone, that Lily was right there, and that I would only be gone for an hour. I left before either of them could argue further. I met Kyle at the gym. We talked in the hallway near the locker rooms, away from the main floor. He touched my arm while we spoke, his hand warm and familiar. He suggested we grab a drink sometime soon, maybe this weekend. I agreed without hesitation. He told me I seemed stressed and that I deserved to do something for myself. I felt seen in a way I hadn't in months. He didn't ask about the kids or Owen's trip. He just saw me, Mel, as a person with her own needs. When I got home, the house was too quiet. I went upstairs and found Lily sitting on Ben's bed, holding him while he slept. Her eyes were red, and she looked up at me with an expression that was part fear, part accusation. She asked in a whisper if I was going to leave them alone again. I said no, that I had just needed to take care of something. She didn't respond, just turned her face away from me. I felt a flicker of guilt, then a surge of anger. I was doing my best. Why did no one see how hard this was for me? That night, after the kids were finally asleep, I sat on the living room sofa with my laptop. I told myself I was just browsing, just looking at options. But I opened a search window and typed in temporary childcare facilities near me. A list appeared, and I clicked through several links. One facility offered emergency placements for families dealing with unexpected crises. I read the description carefully, my heart beating faster. It was just a thought, just an idea. I closed the laptop quickly as if someone might be watching, but the idea didn't leave me. over the weekend, it grew. Lily refused to let me tuck her in on Saturday night, asking for Daddy instead. When I said Daddy wasn't there, she cried until she exhausted herself. Ben wet the bed Sunday morning, and I had to strip the sheets and wash everything. I was furious. I stood in the laundry room, shoving the soiled bedding into the machine, and felt something inside me harden. This wasn't my life. These weren't my problems. I had married Owen, not his dead wife's children. Sunday afternoon, I drove to my mother's house. Patricia was in the kitchen making tea when I arrived. I sat at her table and told her I was struggling. I explained that Owen expected me to handle everything while he was away, that the kids were difficult, that I felt like I was drowning. My mother listened, nodding sympathetically. She said I had every right to want my own life. She said Owen should have thought about what he was asking of me before he remarried. She said the children weren't my responsibility, not really. Her words were like permission, and I felt the weight on my chest ease slightly. That evening, I researched the care facility more carefully. I read reviews, looked at photos, and noted that they accepted emergency placements with minimal paperwork. I rehearsed a story in my head. I would say there was a family emergency. I would say I couldn't reach Owen abroad. I would say it was temporary, just a few days until I could figure things out. The lies came easily, and that should have worried me, but instead I felt relieved. I was taking control. Monday morning, I told Lily and Ben they were going on a short trip. Lily's eyes went wide and she asked where. I said it was a place where other kids would be, somewhere fun. Ben asked if they were coming back. I said of course they were, forcing brightness into my voice, but Lily didn't believe me. I could see it in her face. At the facility, I signed the forms and told my story. The staff member looked sympathetic, and I felt a rush of validation. Someone believed me. Someone understood. I left quickly, not looking back even when I heard Lily's voice calling after me. In the car, I gripped the steering wheel and told myself I had done the right thing. Owen would understand once he calmed down. This was temporary. This was necessary. My phone buzzed with a text from Kyle asking when we could meet again. I smiled and typed a reply. For the first time in days, I felt free. The next few days passed in a strange blur. Without the children in the house, everything felt lighter and quieter. I could sleep in, leave dishes in the sink, come and go as I pleased. I told myself this was what I needed, just a brief pause to catch my breath. Owen called every evening like clockwork, asking to talk to Lily and Ben. I told him they were already asleep, that they had been tired from school. He seemed to accept this at first, though I noticed his voice growing tighter with each call. I kept my tone casual, asking about his meetings, laughing at his small complaints about hotel food. I was good at sounding normal. On Wednesday evening, I met Kyle at the Riverside Park. It was a beautiful afternoon, the kind where the light hits the water just right and everything feels possible. We sat on a bench overlooking the embankment, and Kyle put his arm around my shoulders. I leaned into him, feeling the warmth of the sun and his presence. A jogger passed us, glancing our way twice. I noticed but didn't care. Let people look. I deserved this moment of happiness. Kyle told me I seemed different, more relaxed. I said I had been making some changes, taking time for myself. He asked if my husband's trip was going well, and I said it was fine, that Owen and I were figuring things out. Kyle didn't ask about the kids. He never did. That was part of what made being with him so easy. With Kyle, I wasn't a stepmother or a wife carrying someone else's baggage. I was just Mel, a woman who deserved attention and affection. That night, I returned home feeling energized. But when I walked into the house, the silence felt different, heavier. I went upstairs and past the children's bedroom. The door was open and I could see their unmade beds, toys scattered on the floor. For a moment, something twisted in my chest. Then I reminded myself this was temporary. They were fine. The facility was clean and safe. I was doing what was best for everyone. Thursday morning, Owen called earlier than usual. His voice sounded strained. He said he had tried calling late the night before and I hadn't answered. I told him I had been exhausted and went to bed early. He asked again to talk to the kids. I said they had already left for school. There was a pause on his end, long enough that I felt my pulse quicken. Then he said he would try to call earlier tonight. I agreed and ended the call quickly. At work, Sandra pulled me aside during lunch. She asked if everything was okay at home. I said yes, everything was fine. She hesitated, then said she had heard some things, rumors from people at the gym. My stomach dropped, but I forced a laugh and asked what kind of rumors. Sandra said people were talking about me and Kyle, that someone had seen us together looking more than friendly. I told her it was nothing, that Kyle was just a trainer and people loved to gossip. Sandra's expression was skeptical. She said she wasn't judging, but that I should be careful. I thanked her and walked away, feeling anger rise in my throat. Everyone wanted to control me, to tell me how to live. That weekend, my cousin hosted a family barbecue at the community centre. I almost didn't go, but my mother insisted. She said it would look strange if I stayed home and that I needed to keep up appearances. So I went, wearing a sundress and a smile, pretending everything was normal. Extended family filled the hall, kids running between tables, adults gathered around grills and coolers. My aunt asked where Owen was, and I said he was still travelling for work. Then she asked about Lily and Ben. The question hung in the air. I felt everyone nearby go quiet, waiting for my answer. I said the kids were taking a break, that sometimes children needed to learn independence. My aunt's face froze. Another relative turned to stare. I tried to laugh it off, saying it was complicated, that modern parenting was different. But the silence grew louder. My cousin's wife asked what I meant by taking a break, her voice careful and cold. I said they were staying somewhere else for a bit, that Owen and I thought it would be good for them. My sister Rachel appeared at my elbow. She gripped my arm and pulled me toward the hallway outside the main room. Her face was pale and tight with anger. She asked me directly where the children were. I tried to deflect, saying they were fine and that Owen knew all about it. Rachel's eyes narrowed. She said she didn't believe me, that something felt very wrong. She said she was going to call Owen herself. My stomach lurched. I told her not to, that she would just worry him for no reason. Rachel pulled out her phone and stepped away from me. I watched helplessly as she dialed. I left the barbecue quickly, my face burning. In the car, my hands shook on the steering wheel. I knew Rachel would tell Owen everything, including what I had said in front of the family. I knew the careful story I had built was starting to collapse, but I also felt a stubborn defiance rising in me. I had done what I needed to do. If Owen couldn't see that, if everyone wanted to turn against me, then they were the problem, not me. Sunday afternoon, I went back to my mother's kitchen. Patricia made tea and listened while I explained what had happened at the barbecue. I told her people were overreacting, that I had only sent the kids to a care facility temporarily. My mother's face tightened with concern, but she insisted I hadn't done anything wrong. She said Owen's family was too controlling, that they had never accepted me. She said I deserved to build my own life without constantly being reminded of his dead wife. Her voice was shrill and defensive, and for the first time I wondered if even she was uncertain. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept checking my phone, expecting Owen to call and rage at me, but the call didn't come. Instead, there was silence, the kind of silence that feels like a held breath before a storm. I told myself he was just busy, that Rachel had probably exaggerated everything. But deep down, I knew. I knew Owen was coming home, and I knew nothing would be the same. My phone buzzed once in the dark. A message from Kyle asking if I was okay. I didn't reply. For the first time since I had dropped the children at that facility, I felt genuinely afraid. Owen came home on Monday, 3 days earlier than planned. I was at work when I got the text. It said simply that he had landed and was going to the house. My heart started pounding. I told my manager I felt sick and needed to leave early. Sandra watched me gather my things, her expression unreadable. She didn't say anything, but I could feel her judgment following me out of the office. When I pulled into the driveway, Owen's car was already there. I walked inside and found the house silent and empty. No children's voices, no television, nothing. Owen was standing in the living room, his back to me, staring at the wall where we kept family photos. He didn't turn around when I came in. I said his name, trying to sound calm. He asked quietly where Lily and Ben were. His voice had a quality I had never heard before, flat and distant, like he was speaking to a stranger. I started to explain. I said I had been overwhelmed, that I needed help, and couldn't reach him. I said the facility was safe, and that it was only temporary. Owen turned to face me then, and I saw something in his eyes that made me stop talking. It wasn't anger. It was colder than that. He asked how long they had been there. I hesitated, then admitted it had been almost a week. He nodded slowly, like he was processing information he already knew. Then he picked up his phone and walked out of the room. I followed him, my voice rising. I said he wasn't being fair, that he had left me alone with his children and expected me to handle everything. I said I had done my best. Owen didn't respond. He was already on the phone with someone, asking for an address and confirmation. I realized he was calling the care facility. Panic flooded through me. I tried to take the phone from his hand, but he moved away, his jaw set. He finished the call and told me he was going to get the children. I said we should talk first, that we needed to discuss this calmly. He looked at me and said there was nothing to discuss. Then he left. I stood in the empty house, my hands shaking. I called my mother. Patricia answered on the second ring, and I told her everything was falling apart. She said Owen was being dramatic, that he should have appreciated how hard I was trying. Her words felt hollow. I could hear the uncertainty in her voice even as she defended me. I hung up and sat on the sofa, waiting. Owen returned 2 hours later. I heard the car pull up and went to the window. He was lifting Ben out of the back seat, and Lily climbed out slowly on the other side. Both children looked pale and smaller somehow. Owen held Ben against his chest, and Lily clung to his hand. They came inside without looking at me. Owen took them straight upstairs to their room. I heard the door close. I waited in the living room, my stomach twisting. Eventually Owen came back down. His face was rigid and controlled. He told me his mother was coming to pick up the children, that they would stay with her for a while. I started to protest, saying they belonged here, that this was their home. Owen's voice cut through mine. He said I had given up any right to have a say in where his children stayed. He said Lily had screamed when the facility staff tried to put her to bed the first night. He said Ben had asked repeatedly if they were being sent away because they were bad. His words landed like blows, and I felt my defenses crumble and then rebuild as anger. I told him he was overreacting. I said the children were fine now and that we needed to move forward. Owen stared at me with that same cold distance. He said moving forward was exactly what he planned to do, but not in the way I thought. Before I could ask what he meant, the doorbell rang. It was Diane, Owen's mother. She walked in without greeting me, went straight upstairs and came back down holding Lily's hand while Ben clung to Owen's leg. Diane looked at me for the first time. Her expression was pure contempt. She said she didn't understand how anyone could do what I had done. She said those children had already lost their mother, and I had made them feel abandoned all over again. I tried to defend myself, saying I had been overwhelmed and alone. Diane shook her head. She said there was no defense, no excuse. She took the children and left without another word. Owen went with them, and I was alone again. That night, Rachel called. Her voice was cold and sad at the same time. She said she had told Owen everything, including what I had said at the barbecue. I accused her of betraying me, of ruining my marriage. Rachel was quiet for a moment. Then she said I had ruined it myself, that she was ashamed to be my sister. She said what I did to those children was unforgivable. I hung up on her, my hands trembling with rage and fear. The next day at work was unbearable. Sandra didn't speak to me except when necessary. At lunch, I overheard two colleagues whispering, and I caught the words stepkids and sent them away. I walked past quickly, my face burning. Later, Sandra pulled me aside. Her voice was gentle but firm. She said people were talking, that the story had spread. She said she had her own child to think about and couldn't be seen supporting someone who had done what I did. I felt the ground shift under me. Even Sandra, who had been my friend, was stepping back. Owen came home late that evening. He went straight to the guest bedroom and closed the door. I knocked and asked if we could talk. He opened the door slightly but didn't invite me in. Behind him, I saw his laptop open on the desk, a spreadsheet visible on the screen. There were neat stacks of papers and folders labelled in his careful handwriting. He said we would talk when there was something to talk about. Then he closed the door. I stood in the hallway listening to the sound of his keyboard clicking. Later, I heard his phone buzz with a calendar reminder. I couldn't see what it said, but I heard him dismiss it quickly. That night, I lay awake in our bed alone. Owen stayed in the guest bedroom. The house felt larger and colder than it ever had before. The next morning, Ben called from Diane's house. Owen answered and put the phone on speaker, probably so Diane could hear. Ben's small voice asked why Mel had sent them away. He asked if it was because they were bad. Owen knelt down, and though I couldn't see him, I could hear the pain in his voice. He told Ben it wasn't his fault, that Mel had made a very bad choice. He said they were safe now and that he would make sure they stayed safe. After the call ended, Owen sat at the kitchen table and took out a small notebook. He began writing, noting the date and what Ben had said. I watched from the doorway, and he looked up at me once. His expression was unreadable. Then he returned to his notes, and I realized with creeping dread that he was documenting everything. The days after Owen's return felt like living with a stranger. He moved through the house like a ghost, present but untouchable. He spoke to me only when necessary, and his words were always polite, measured, stripped of any warmth. I tried multiple times to start conversations about us, about fixing things, but he would listen silently and then walk away. It was worse than anger. Anger I could have fought against. This calm detachment left me with nothing to push back on. By the end of that week, Owen had moved most of his belongings into the guest bedroom. I noticed it happening gradually. First, it was just a few shirts and his toiletries, then his laptop and chargers, then entire drawers worth of clothes. On Friday evening, I tried the guest bedroom door and found it locked. I knocked, and Owen opened it calmly. Behind him, I glimpsed his desk covered with neatly labelled binders and folders. A USB drive sat next to his laptop. He asked if I needed something, his tone perfectly polite. I said I just wanted to talk. He said he was busy and closed the door. The lock clicked into place with a finality that made my chest tighten. That same night, Owen's phone lit up with a call while he was in the kitchen. The screen showed private number. He glanced at it, then stepped into the hallway to answer. I strained to hear from the living room, catching only fragments of his side of the conversation. He said yes several times, then I understand, and finally, next Thursday. His voice was low and controlled. When he came back, I asked who had called. He said it was just something he needed to handle. His face gave nothing away. After that call, Owen's behaviour shifted in a way I couldn't quite name. He became even calmer, if that was possible. When I tried to argue with him about the children, about us, he would simply listen without reacting. Then he would nod and walk away, as if I had been discussing the weather. It felt like arguing with a wall. I told him he was being cold and manipulative. He said nothing, just looked at me with those distant eyes before turning back to whatever he was doing. The following Tuesday, I noticed a calendar reminder pop up on Owen's phone while it sat on the kitchen counter. It read, Maple Street, 11:20 a.m. I asked him what it was. He picked up the phone calmly and said it was just an errand he needed to run. His voice was casual, but something about the way he held the phone, slightly angled away from me, felt deliberate. He left the house that morning and returned 2 hours later. When he came back, he immediately went to the guest bedroom, and I heard the lock click shut behind him. After that appointment, Owen started insisting we split bills more clearly. He sat me down at the kitchen table with a spreadsheet and went through every expense, dividing them precisely. He moved his wallet and keys to the guest bedroom and started opening all the mail himself before I could see it. When I accused him of being petty and controlling, he simply nodded and said he thought it was better to have clear records. His tone was so reasonable, so calm, that it made me feel like I was the one being irrational. Another calendar entry appeared a few days later. This one said, "Meeting personal," with no other details. Owen dismissed the reminder quickly when it popped up, but not before I saw it. I demanded to know what these meetings were about. He said he was handling some personal matters and that I would know more when it was appropriate. The vagueness infuriated me. I asked if he was seeing a therapist, a lawyer, or someone else. He said he was taking care of things properly, and that was all I needed to know for now. My mother called that week and said she wanted to invite us both to dinner. I told her Owen probably wouldn't come. She insisted I ask anyway, saying family was important. When I mentioned it to Owen, he declined immediately. He said he was busy and needed to focus on other things. I went to my mother's house alone, humiliated. Patricia tried to comfort me, saying Owen was punishing me and being vindictive. But even as she spoke, I could hear the uncertainty creeping into her voice. She asked if I had really thought through what I did with the children. I snapped at her, saying I thought she was on my side. She went quiet after that. Owen had another appointment marked in his calendar for the following Monday. This one read, Riverside Office Park, 3:10 p.m. He left in the afternoon and returned just before dinner. When he came back, he went straight to the guest bedroom. I heard the printer start up, a sound that had become strangely common over the past weeks. Later, when I walked past the room, I caught the faint smell of printer toner. I knocked and asked what he was printing. Owen opened the door slightly and said he was organising some household documents. Behind him, I saw stacks of papers arranged in perfect piles, each labelled with dates. After that appointment, Owen became almost robotic in his organisation. He kept his side of the house immaculate. His documents were arranged in binders divided by category. When I tried to provoke him, asking if he was planning to leave me or if he had met someone else, he didn't rise to the bait. He simply observed me, his expression neutral, and then returned to whatever he was doing. His phone was always charged, always within reach, always face down on whatever surface he set it on. The children came to visit one Saturday, brought by Diane. I tried to talk to Lily to explain that I had made a mistake but that I cared about them. Lily looked at me with those knowing eyes and said nothing. She turned and walked to Owen, pressing herself against his side. Ben wouldn't even look at me. Owen spent the entire visit with them, taking them to the park, making them lunch, reading to them. He didn't ask me to join. When Diane came to pick them up, she glared at me from the doorway. Owen hugged both children tightly and promised he would see them again very soon. That evening, I tried one more time to reach him. I asked Owen directly if he still loved me, if there was any chance we could fix this. He looked at me for a long moment. Then he said he needed to focus on his children, that they were his priority now. The way he said now, as if they hadn't always been, cut through me. I asked what that meant for us. He said I would understand soon enough. His tone was final, like a door closing. One night that week, I woke up to use the bathroom and noticed light coming from under the guest bedroom door. I stood in the hallway listening. I heard the soft clicking of keyboard keys, then the hum of the printer starting up again. I knocked softly. Owen didn't answer. I tried the handle and found it locked. I stood there for a moment, my hand on the cold metal, feeling more shut out than I ever had in my life. The next morning, I ran into a neighbour at the pharmacy. She asked how the children were doing, her voice careful and laden with meaning. I said they were fine. She nodded slowly and said she had heard about the situation and that she hoped everything worked out. I felt my face burn with shame. The story had spread beyond my family, beyond my co-workers. People I barely knew were talking about what I had done. Owen had one more appointment that week. His calendar reminder read, Harbour Building 9:35 a.m. He left early and came back late in the afternoon. When he returned, he seemed different. Not angry, not sad, just resolved. He moved through the house with a quiet purpose that made me nervous. That evening, he sat me down in the living room. He said he had been thinking carefully about everything. He said he was going to handle things properly, through the right channels, and that I should expect some changes soon. I asked what he meant. He said I would find out when the time came. Then he stood up and went back to the guest bedroom. I sat alone on the sofa, my mind racing. I wanted to demand answers, to force him to tell me what he was planning. But something in his tone, in the calm certainty of his words, stopped me. For the first time, I felt genuinely afraid, not of Owen himself, but of what he might have set in motion while I wasn't paying attention. That night, I heard him moving around in the guest bedroom. The lock clicked, footsteps crossed the floor, a drawer opened and closed, then silence. I lay in our bed alone, staring at the ceiling and wondered what was coming. But I told myself he was just trying to scare me. Owen was predictable. He wouldn't actually do anything drastic. He never had before. I had no idea how wrong I was. I read the petition again, noting every detail Owen had documented. The timeline was perfect. The evidence is irrefutable. He had been gathering proof since the moment he came home, maybe even before. Every calm conversation, every quiet meeting, every locked door had been part of this. I looked at the hearing date one last time. Thursday, 9 a.m., family court. The words blurred as tears filled my eyes. Owen had handled it properly, just like he promised, and I had given him every reason he needed.